Yo, 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 what is up, guys? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer. Finally back in my typical setup. If you've watched any of my videos over the past week, you've probably noticed that I'm either in a hotel room or I was up against just a blank white wall. I was doing some traveling. I went to Game 7 of the Sixers-Hawks series, which I made a vlog on that I'm going to be posting pretty soon, so keep an eye out for that. I'm still editing it, so don't worry, that hasn't gone anywhere. I was also visiting my girlfriend. I went to a wedding, and so this is the first time I've been home in over a week, so it's been a lot, but I appreciate you guys still supporting those videos when I more sporadically drop them. I promise the consistency is going to come back. Every night that there's an NBA game, you will see at least one video, if not sometimes two, on this channel through the end of the rest of the NBA season. And after that, in the off season, I've got some really cool ideas for videos, some retrospective stuff. You're going to see some draft stuff coming up. So if you don't want to miss out on that, make sure you subscribe and leave a like on this video. I appreciate all the support. It's been crazy over the past week. So let's get into the game. That's why you actually clicked on this video. To be honest, if I'm being completely transparent, thought I was going to come into this video and talk about how Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, Cam Johnson, Cameron Payne, all these guys on the Phoenix Suns have made their first NBA Finals. I thought that's what this video was going to be about. I thought I was going to title it like the Phoenix Suns are back in the NBA Finals or whatever. The thumbnail is probably going to be something with like Chris Paul and Devin Booker holding up like a Western Conference Finals trophy, something like that. And instead, here I am, telling you that the Clippers have just extended the series to a Game 6. They came in to Phoenix, despite being down 3-1, which I know the lead's a meme. Despite being down 3-1, a position that they were in last year and ended up blowing it, they stepped up in the face of adversity on the opponent's home court, and despite last game losing Zubac, a guy who's been really big in this series, not just in terms of the fact that he's like 7 feet tall, but in terms of that he's been really important to their game plan, a lot of possessions, losing him to injury for this game, and maybe even the rest of the series. It sounded kind of bad what he had. I think they said he had like a partial tear in his knee. It sounded kind of similar to what Kawhi has, who I also think is out for the rest of the playoffs. The Clippers have faced a lot of adversity leading into this game and over the course of the playoffs as a whole, but similarly to the way they've performed over the course of these playoffs, in tonight's game, when they needed to step up most, when they faced the most adversity in the biggest game in Clippers franchise history, they won. And their guys stepped up. In the biggest game in a lot of these guys' careers, they stepped up in a big way. The Clippers have just become the exact opposite of what they were last season. Last year's Clippers team probably would have just folded here. Even when they were winning 3-1, whenever the pressure got a little too big for them, they folded in those playoffs. And instead this year, they've done the exact opposite, and I've kind of seen an effect of that. I'm really active on Twitter. If you haven't seen me on Twitter already, which I'd be surprised if you didn't, at 3_Cone on Twitter, go follow me. When scrolling through my timeline, I expected way more Clippers hate over the course of this series. And instead, I've seen a lot of people kind of flip towards the Clippers side, which is surprising because the Suns have a lot of fan favorites. But people like the Clippers now. And I think that's a combination of the fact that they got humbled last year and that they're playing through a lot of adversity. The Clippers have earned the respect and admiration of a lot of people that were really clowning them. NBA Twitter, I've never seen it more active than last year. That night where the Nuggets won in Game 7, where the Clippers blew that 3-1 lead, I've never seen NBA Twitter more active and more in slander mode. Every person, Doc Rivers, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, even like Steve Ballmer was catching strays from people on NBA Twitter. It was ridiculous. And so to see that flip to this season, they had to have done something big, and making this first Western Conference Finals run, despite going down 0-2 in their first series, despite going down 0-2 again, despite losing Kawhi Leonard for probably the rest of the playoffs, they continue to step up. And specifically, it's Paul George. Paul George, in a microcosm of what we saw last year to this year, where last year the Clippers got really slandered, and this year they're getting a lot more praise, Paul George was the guy who got slandered by far the most at the end of that Nuggets series. There were memes of him hitting the side of the backboard in Game 7. There were people talking about the Playoff P nickname, whatever you want to say. They were all there. And the way he responded this year is stepping up his game, and when a top 5 player in the entire NBA went down. When he went down, I don't think anyone would have blamed the Clippers if they lost to the Jazz. I thought the series was over, and the Clippers continue to prove me wrong, but that was one moment where I was like, the Jazz have to win this, right? And instead, they finished the Jazz off in 6 games. coming into the series without Kawhi Leonard, I thought as soon as Chris Paul came back, it was just going to be bang, bang, done. When they lost the first 2 games, I know they've done that in the last 2 series, and they've still continued to win the series. But when they lost those first 2 games, I was like, this could be a sweep. Coming into tonight's game, I thought it was over. They win. The Clippers continue to prove me wrong, and Paul George is the big catalyst for that, and I think I'm starting to see people, similar to the way that they have flipped on the Clippers team, liking them a lot more these playoffs. I think I see people flipping on Paul George a little bit more, but I'm going to take this moment to say that if you have not turned around on Paul George, if you're still one of those guys who, because there's a lot of them, are still in my comment section whenever I tweet about Paul George praise, if you're still one of those people that are like, oh, he hasn't proven anything to me yet, like, he's still a choker, he's still like, pandemic P, whatever you want to say, just stop. Paul George has been incredible in the most important game in his franchise's history. I don't think anyone would have blamed them if they lost this game. No Zubac, no Kawhi Leonard, no one would have blamed them. If they lost this game, I don't think it's anything but praise on the timeline for the Clippers. And despite that, Paul George said, I don't care. I'm not playing for praise. I'm playing for an NBA title. He dropped this was his best game of his career, when his team needed him most. I didn't look very far into the stats. I don't care. Whatever stats he's put up in the past is nothing compared to this Western Conference Finals game. He put up a hyper-efficient 41-13-6 game. He played 41 minutes. He now leads the second most guy in the playoffs in minutes, which I think is Trae Young with around 550 or so. He leads Trae Young in playoff minutes by nearly 200 minutes. Paul George has played so much basketball. And for a guy that's gotten a lot of hate for being fragile, for missing time, for resting, for not performing in the playoffs, he has played a ton of minutes and he has stepped up every single game. I don't care about shooting splits in some of the games. He is doing what the Clippers need him to do to give them the best chance of winning. And when the Clippers needed Paul George the most, the Clippers' most important game in their franchise history, Paul George has the best game of his career. And if that's not enough to make you just stop hating, I don't think anything is. At that point, I don't think even if the Clippers win a title, despite not having Kawhi Leonard, I don't think you would be satisfied. Paul George has been great. Exceptional. He's been a star in these playoffs. He has been playoff P. I guess this is what he meant when he mentioned the nickname. He's been playoff P. And these Clippers continue to step up in adversity, and Paul George has been their leader. Marcus Morris had a great game. Reggie Jackson might be playing like LeBron James. He's getting a bag this offseason, by the way. I need to make a whole video about guys that in these playoffs have secured themselves a bag, because Reggie Jackson is number 1 on that list with the way that he's... This game, he had a dunk that looked like prime Westbrook. It was ridiculous. I don't know what's happening with Reggie Jackson, but those guys have really stepped up big, but Paul George is their leader. He's their best player. They started Terrence Mann at center tonight, and credit to Terrence Mann for playing big as a center in this game against a guy in DeAndre Ayton who has been incredible in this series. The Tyronn Lue and the Clippers have found a way to neutralize pretty much whatever teams throw at them. It has been very rare in this series that Tyronn Lue and the team that he has have not made a really good adjustment to what the other team is doing multiple times in the series. Tyronn Lue is another guy who I have gained a lot of respect for over the course of these playoffs. Tyronn Lue has proven to me that he's a really good coach. I don't know where he ranks in NBA coaches, but if I'm a player, I want to play for Tyronn Lue. And if I'm a fan of a team, I want Tyronn Lue coaching my team. He has shown me that he is a good coach. Some people didn't like that when I tweeted that out earlier. You can debate with me in the comment section below. I think he's a good coach. And so, these Clippers, especially this Clippers team, which is a team as a Thunder fan, I should probably want to fail, because if they fail, if Kawhi leaves, our draft picks get better. But at this point, I pretty much accepted that Kawhi's not leaving. And while, yes, I am rooting for the Suns, I'm going to be honest, because they have Chris Paul, Devin Booker, 2 of my favorite players in the entire NBA. These Clippers have gotten a fan out of me. And especially Paul George. I'm rooting so hard for Paul George every night he goes out there, because I am sick of seeing people, despite the great playoff run he's been having, continue to try and discredit him. He is doing incredible things. He is doing things that very few players in the entire NBA can do. Most players played this amount of minutes and they'd be done. They'd be gassed. They'd be shut down. When you lose a top 5 player, no one would have given Paul George any crap if he had just lost those last 2 games. No one would have given him crap at all, because I don't think anyone should reasonably expect them to have gone this far while losing Kawhi Leonard. And Paul George has played like a superstar since Kawhi's went down. He has. He's been really good. So show Paul George some respect. These Clippers have earned a lot of mine. As for the Phoenix Suns, it just wasn't a good game from the peripheral guys. Chris Paul and Devin Booker had good games. DeAndre Ayton really wasn't present. I don't think he knew how to adjust quite to the small ball. He has been going like big man on big man, like body to body in the post against Zubac, pretty much this entire series. And so to have him play against these smaller guys, I think he was just trying to adjust and figure out how to play. He struggled with it this game. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a lot better at it next game if Zubac still is out. Not a good game for Mikal Bridges. Cam Johnson, great game. Cam Johnson was so damn good in this game. He deserves a lot of credit. Just overall an unsung hero for the Suns over the course of the season. Jay Crowder wasn't very good. The Suns just weren't on their A game tonight. I don't know if they expected the Clippers to come out and play like this. And Tyronn Lue made some great adjustments that really threw them off, made them uncomfortable, especially in that first half. And the Clippers are going to need it again. They're going to need this exact performance. They need more of this superstar level play from Paul George, more of that star level play from Reggie Jackson, another great game from those peripheral guys like a Marcus Morris, if they want to extend this to a Game 7. And if the Clippers win this Game 7, I will never slander the Clippers ever again. Never. Because they will have completely flipped the script on everything. And I'm not going to lie, I do want the Suns to win, but it would also, at the same time, be very poetic if the Clippers somehow managed to... Can you imagine this NBA timeline if the Clippers come back from a 3-1 deficit after the way that the last season ended? At that point, I would just say the NBA is rigged at that point if that storyline comes to fruition. But really, this game was just the Paul George masterclass. So, really, the moral of the story is I need to stop sleeping on the Clippers. If you still are, you need to stop sleeping on Paul George. He's a top 15 guy. He is. And it's cool to see him play up to the level that I saw him play in OKC a lot of times. He was, a lot of people forget, just a few seasons ago, he was an MVP and Defensive Player of the Year finalist in the same season. He's a great basketball player. No matter what the memes tell you, no matter what the narrative is, you can think for yourself, and Paul George is a great basketball player. He deserves your respect, so, put some respect on Paul George. Appreciate you guys watching this video. Once again, thank you so much for the support. Happy to be back in my normal setup. I'll see you guys later probably tomorrow, for the next game of the Hawks-Bucks series. I'll see you guys later.